March Madness is living up to its name for sure after a series of spectacular upsets shook up the tournament over the weekend. After the smoke cleared from the crazy first round, there isn't a single perfect bracket left out of about 20 million brackets that are tracked by the NCAA.com. The last three brackets were knocked out on Saturday after Maryland defeated UConn and added its name to the list of underdogs that took down some of the tournament's top teams. So, to recap what's gone on so far, let's bring in Matt Norlander. He's a CBS Sports college basketball writer. So yeah, a lot going on over the weekend. Give us kind of like a quick rundown of kind of the highs and lows.
Yeah, we'll stick with on-court stuff here to start. We are on pace to the wildest first weekend, and it's a Monday, but there will be games today. We'll get to that in a second. It's the wildest first weekend potentially in the history of the NCAA tournament. You want a reason? I can't give it to you. That's just what this tournament does. Maybe it's because it's in a unique one amid a pandemic. Everyone's playing in the state of Indiana. There aren't, huge crowds there. I don't know. But number 15 seed Oral Roberts is going to play in the Sweet 16 next weekend. It's just the second time a 15 seed has ever won 2 games in the NCAA tournament. We also have had number 11 seed Syracuse, a familiar school, of course, but it wasn't expected to be this good. It's going to move on. We had Oregon State. Oregon State, first of all, yeah, shouts to Oral Roberts there. Oregon State is a 12 seed. It won the final game of Sunday night. Has not made the Sweet 16 since 1982. I don't believe either of our CBSN hosts were born in 1982. It's been that long. So we have had many upsets, but perhaps the biggest story, if you will, is Loyola Chicago beating Illinois, the number 1 seed, to move to the Sweet 16. Of course, this was a story that went international in 2018 when Loyola Chicago made the Final Four. They got to win 2 more games to get there, but I've spoken with the players and the coaches. This team is better than the Final Four team. 101-year-old Sister Jean will continue to be a national sensation as Loyola Chicago will play Oregon State on Saturday. I'm going to be there in Indianapolis. I can't wait to get there. So the biggest theme overall is the spate of upsets we've had, and a lot of big, power schools. They've been knocked out. We got to get 8 more games in today, and once those finish, we'll have a Sweet 16.
Got news for you, Matt. I was at that game. No, only kidding. But it is interesting that you've got these brackets that have blown up, including former President Barack Obama, who had picked, I guess, all the number 1 seeds to go to the Final Four. I guess he's out. So if he's done, the question becomes, who is this year's Cinderella story?
Well, we've got a couple of candidates. Right now, we know for sure Oral Roberts is one Cinderella story because it is a 15 seed. It's actually got a player whose last name is spelled A-B-M-A-S, but it's pronounced, so you think it's Abmas. No, it's Max Abmas. Max Abmas. He's the leading scorer in college basketball, and they're a wonderful team to watch. They actually have on their court back in their campus the slogan, "Expect a Miracle." They expected a miracle, and they got one by getting to the Sweet 16, but they might not be the only one. Now, Loyola Chicago is no Cinderella anymore. They aren't a double-digit seed. This is a quality program. They've made a Final Four. They will still be a charming story, but Oral Roberts is the Cinderella story. And then on Monday, we've got a couple more, just so you know. There, look at this. Sister Jean, this tournament's amazing. A centenarian is the most famous sports fan in the entire country. On the other side of the bracket, games that will be played today, Abilene Christian, which has only been eligible to play in the NCAA tournament for about 8 years at the D1 level. It will play today to try and get to the Sweet 16 as a 14 seed. And then 13-seeded Ohio is going to play Creighton if it advances to Sweet 16. It could also be a Cinderella. We'll see if either of those teams win. But right now, Oral Roberts, which will play Arkansas, is the definitive Cinderella story and certainly a team to keep an eye on. It's good enough to win another game. We'll see if it does. Arkansas is the better team, but it's absolutely good enough to keep this thing going.
So you mentioned you didn't know why this was so wild, and perhaps it's COVID. Saturday night's game between VCU and Oregon was ruled no contest after multiple players on VCU's team tested positive for the coronavirus. What can you tell us about this, and just how concerned are organizers that this could happen again?
There is daily concern that something like this can happen again. Let's start with VCU's situation here. So this is through my reporting, through my sources there. VCU had its first positive test on its roster surface last Wednesday. Now, one positive test isn't reason to have overt concern. We've had teams play in this tournament that have had one positive test and they've continued to play their games. But then they had more positive tests surface Thursday. They retested for Saturday morning. Those tests came back confirmed, and there were 3 players that tested positive for COVID-19 on VCU's roster. The local health officials assessed the situation and said, we want to make sure that we don't worsen this situation. There's no guarantee anyone else is going to catch COVID on this roster, but we're not going to chance it. We're not comfortable with it. So it went to the NCAA and said, we're going to recommend that you not play in this tournament. So VCU was knocked out. No one truly knows where VCU, got infected with this. But I did have a story on CBSSports.com that references sources connected to the VCU program that, say we stayed in a hotel for our Atlantic 10 championship game, 5-6 days prior. We were there with the general public. There were some people not wearing masks. That may or may not have been the reason, but and there's no blame that's being tossed around by VCU to anyone else. But obviously, it's an unfortunate situation, and VCU had to go back home, and it will not play an NCAA tournament game because of that. Oregon got to advance into the bracket, and it will play the first game here on Monday. We hope that nothing else like this happens, but we'll have to wait. Everyone is testing daily, guys. Daily, every single day, everyone is testing. And you really just cross your fingers and hope that no other team is affected in this kind of way. But there's no guarantee of it. We wait and see and hope that each day passes and we won't have another situation like this.
So let me ask you, what are you looking forward, Matt, to today's games?
Well, we have a very, very good slate. In fact, it's going to be, I know the CBSN studios are going to just be, going crazy with Monday NCAA tournament action. I can feel the anticipation just coming right off my screen as I talk to you guys right now here. We start at noon with that Oregon team that's yet to play a game. It will play against Iowa. That's a game that I'm eager to see because Oregon's good enough to defeat Iowa. Iowa has probably the national player of the year, Luka Garza. He's a 6'10" big man who is capable of dominating now and dominating the YMCA when he's 68 years old. So can Iowa, with the best player in college basketball, get past a talented Oregon team? That's the game I'm watching. And then if we want to see if the upset streak can continue, number 1 seeded Michigan is going to play LSU, an 8 seed. And LSU is highly talented, certainly capable of beating Michigan. That game will be a little later on this evening. And will we see another number 1 seed go down? We saw Illinois go down at the hands of Loyola on Sunday. Gonzaga is going to play Oklahoma. That would truly be a stunner if Gonzaga lost to Oklahoma. Not that it's impossible. I just don't think it's going to happen. Gonzaga is the best team in the tournament. But I think number 1 seed in Michigan is in a vulnerable spot here. We could have some more chaos. And if we have, say, an LSU beat a Michigan or Ohio beat Creighton or Abilene Christian come in and knock off a win against number 11 UCLA, we will, by the data, by the stats, we will have the most upset-laden first weekend of the tournament ever. And, hey, I say bring it to me. I want as much chaos as possible, and I think we're going to have an awesome day, a final day of the first weekend of the NCAA tournament.
Listen, before we let you go, I got to ask you about this video that went viral. There was a women's player who shot video of the men's workout area versus the women's workout area. And of course, the men's workout area had all this great equipment, and then the women's was like this puny sort of stack of weights you might use for your home jazzercise routine. So it went viral. There's a lot of criticism, but it turned out to be pretty good because NCAA corrected that. Let's call it an oversight.
Yeah, well, even the food is different, right, Matt? I mean, the food that their athletes are getting is different. And I even reported on Friday that the gift bags, which I know is not a big deal, but why would they be different?
What?
Why not? Marie's like, yeah, the gift bags are a big deal.
Yes.
I like free stuff.
I hear you. Yeah, no, it's a problem. By the way, I was unaware that you were aware of my jazzercise regimen, so I got serious questions.
That was
right
in
now.
fact your gym, Matt, that the athletes are using.
As for this situation, obviously, this is the power of social media, and it was a player auction on Oregon's women's team that brought this to light, and good for her for doing it because the NCAA got caught red-handed with its pants down, whatever analogy you want to use there, whatever metaphor you want to use. This is a terrible look for the NCAA, which immediately came out, admitted its mistake. You cannot have this. the men's tournament does make more money than the women's tournament. That's undeniable. But the women deserve every single opportunity and luxury, if you will, in their tournament as with the men there. And there have been a lot of high-profile active coaches, former coaches, WNBA players, NBA players, college basketball players in the men's tournament right now speaking to this. And it should have never gotten to this point. But the power of the athlete, of the coach, to kind of go back at the NCAA and say, this can never happen again. Like, you cannot have this kind of inequality between these two tournaments. The women's basketball players, they sacrificed just as much as the men. They went through just as much as the men. They don't deserve to show up and basically have almost nothing in terms of things that help you perform actually what you want to do, strength and conditioning, real weight room. So showing the true power of the NCAA and the money it has behind it if it wants to get things done, in 24 hours, they completely changed what was happening with the weight room. The swag bag differences were obviously significant. I actually posted a photo about a week ago on the men's side that subsequently went viral once the women's photo swag bag was placed right alongside of it. I don't have an update on if they've been given more stuff or not, but it's obviously not a good look for the women's side of the tournament and for the NCAA in general. Hopefully we'll never have to talk about something like this again, and every year going forward there is equal consideration and goodies and just weight room. Everything that's tied to this will be provided to both sides.
Yeah, but it's interesting, Matt, and I know there are more important issues to focus on, but than the swag bag. But it's something that Anne-Marie and I have talked about in the past, which is the system. It's like sort of the systemic issue that it's great that they fixed it, but it's the mindset that said, let's just do it this way and no one will say anything, or why should we bother to make the effort to make the women's gym comparable to the men's gym? I'm more interested in like that mindset and where that came from, as opposed to doing the right thing now after they've been shamed by reporters like yourself and others, and the players themselves who've pointed out these inequalities.
No, I agree with you, and why it starts like that, I don't know. I wish I had an answer for you, other than the obvious one, where there is a bias that exists, kind of in a macro groupthink sort of way, where everything about the men's tournament, is more important, deserves more attention, deserves more things than the women's tournament. And it's just not fair. I mean, my beat, I am tasked as in my occupation to cover men's college basketball. I'm not asked to write about women's college basketball, but I do occasionally watch it. We should be propping up the women's tournament because in many ways, the women's game is equal, if not surpasses the men's game, particularly like with rule things. And I won't go down the rabbit hole in terms of stuff that sometimes happens in the men's game versus the women's game and why women's rules are actually better. But this kind of thing, certainly, I hate that it had to get to this point, but I'm glad that it got to this point because it can never happen again. And if anyone in power at the NCAA had any doubt about the power of social media and the voice of the student athlete, I mean, the swiftness with which this was fixed, and it wasn't an easy fix, really speaks to the power of players. And the NCAA better get used to it because that's never changing again.
Very sound words. Matt, always great to have you, brother. Thank you very much. We'll be watching.
Thank you.
All right. You can stay up to date on all the latest scores from the tournament throughout the day right here on CBSN, and you can watch live games on CBS and stream them on Paramount Plus.